While eagerly awaiting the arrival of a family willing to adopt her, Emma does her best to help care for the young girls at the orphanage, as she is one of the oldest children at Gracefield House. Despite not having a mother to care for them, the boys and girls who live there are very happy, because in addition to having each other, they are deeply loved by Isabella, the orphanage's supervisor. Every month, the children of Gracefield undergo logical reasoning tests to assess their intelligence. As usual, Norman, Ray, and Emma achieve the highest scores and are congratulated by Isabella, who says she is proud of their performance. After school, all the children are allowed to play outside and play their favorite game, hide and seek. While Norman counts, all his friends look for different hiding places, but without ever leaving the orphanage grounds, as this is the rule established by Isabella. After finding all the younger children, Norman goes after Emma and realizes that she is hiding in the treetops. So he pretends to fall to get the girl to come down and help him, and in doing so, she ends up getting caught. That day, in the late afternoon, the children at the orphanage say goodbye to Connie, as she is leaving to meet her new adoptive family. Although she is sad to leave her friends, the girl is excited about the wonderful future that awaits her, and all the other young people, including Emma, are happy for her. When they turn 16, all the children are required to be placed with adoptive parents so they don't remain in the orphanage until they reach adulthood. As such, Emma and Norman, who are already 15, realize that their time in that place is running out and promise to write to each other when they leave. After being adopted by their families, the children never contact those who stayed at Gracefield again, and Emma believes it is because they are so happy that they forget their friends. While making promises to write to each other, Emma and Norman arrive in the kitchen and spot Connie's favorite stuffed bunny. At that moment, Ray appears and advises his two friends to go after her, as they may still be able to catch up with her. When they arrive at the warehouse where the children are delivered to their families, Emma and Norman realize that something is wrong, as the place is completely dark. Still, they both decide to look for the girl, and Emma ends up finding Connie's body in the back of a truck. Terrified, the girl walks away and Norman decides to look inside. At that moment, he sees a red flower coming out of Connie's chest. As they try to process what is happening, the two friends hear a deep voice approaching and hide under the vehicle along with the stuffed rabbit. At that moment, they see two scary-looking demons approaching and discover that they are there to take Connie's body. According to those monsters, the human flesh produced at Gracefield Farm is grade A, therefore reserved only for the rich. Soon after, Isabella appears and one of the demons orders her to prepare the three oldest children to be delivered shortly. When they discover that the supervisor works for those creatures, Emma goes into shock and Norman starts looking for an escape route. Suddenly, one of the monsters begins to smell something strange and bends down to look under the vehicle, but finds only the stuffed rabbit that was left behind. Upon seeing the toy, Isabella begins to suspect that another child was there, but decides to keep her suspicions a secret. When they return to the orphanage, Emma and Norman find Ray, but decide not to tell him what they have just witnessed. During the night, Emma has nightmares about the demons she saw that night and begins to cry over Connie's perishment. Now that she knows that the orphanage serves as a farm for raising children to be devoured, the girl loses all her joy and asks Norman for help in devising an escape plan. After discovering the truth, the teenagers realize that the fence that was built around the orphanage is not there to protect them, but to keep the children imprisoned. Determined to save all the young people in the orphanage, Emma and Norman devise a plan to climb the wall and see what's on the other side. However, upon hearing the sound of bells, they decide to return so as not to arouse suspicion and hear one of the children saying that Nayla is lost in the forest. Upon hearing this, Isabella uses a device to find the girl's location and, minutes later, returns with Nayla in her arms. At that moment, Emma and Norman discover that all the children have a tracker implanted in their ears and can be easily found by the supervisor. The next day, when he sees the two friends talking in the forest, Ray approaches them to ask what they are talking about and says that they have been acting strangely since the night they went to the warehouse. Emma decides to tell him what she saw that night and is surprised at how easily Ray believes her story. However, now that they have Ray's support, Emma and Norman feel even more confident that they will be able to escape from that prison along with all the other children. After a few hours of studying in the library, they come to the conclusion that demons usually devour children's brains. Because of this, Isabella forces them to study hard to increase their intelligence. With Phil's help, the trio finds a collection of books donated by William Minerva that uses Morse code to communicate with its readers. That afternoon, the young people are introduced to a new supervisor who will help Isabella take care of them all. When she discovers that some children have uncovered the truth behind the orphanage, Krona despairs and insists that they must be handed over as soon as possible. However, Isabella knows that doing so will tarnish her reputation and says that all Krona needs to do is keep an eye on the children to make sure they don't try to escape. Knowing that the next delivery date will be in 45 days, Emma and her friends realize that they are running out of time, as they need to find a way to escape before any more children are handed over. To ensure that everyone improves their physical abilities, the trio decides to train the younger children during a game of hide and seek so that Isabella doesn't suspect anything. However, to everyone's surprise, Krona decides to join in the game and starts counting so the children can hide. After finding the younger ones, the woman goes after Emma and manages to find her hiding behind a rock with a little girl in her arms. As she was trying to save one of the children, Emma ends up getting caught, but Ray and Norman win the game, as Krona is unable to catch them within the stipulated 20 minutes. At the end of the game, Norman realizes that Isabella already knows that he and Emma went to the warehouse and comes to the conclusion that the supervisor has an informant among the children. In an attempt to find out who the traitor is, Norman decides to test his friends and, instead of telling everyone what happened to Connie, the trio passes on the information little by little. The first to learn the truth are Dawn and Gilda, who are outraged when they hear the news. However, Emma manages to convince them that demons exist, as she has built a relationship of trust with all the other children over the years. When they return to their rooms, Norman reveals that he has a plan to unmask the traitor. In a conversation with Emma and Ray, he tells them where he hid the rope they built to cross the wall and reveals that he gave different instructions to Dawn and Gilda. While Dawn believes the rope is hidden under Norman's bed, Gilda is told that the rope is in the attic. What the two young people don't realize is that there are two ropes, and if one of them disappears, Norman will know who the traitor is. That night, Isabella receives information that the rope is under Norman's bed, and the next morning, the boy shares the results of his test with Emma and Ray. According to him, the rope that was under his bed disappeared, and Ray comes to the conclusion that Dawn is the traitor. What the boy doesn't realize is that he himself fell for Norman's test and revealed himself to be Isabella's informant. The truth is that Norman gave Dawn another location and set a special trap for Ray, because from the beginning he suspected that he might be the spy. Upon being discovered, Ray decides to reveal that he is working with Isabella to keep the children in line. When he was only 6 years old, Ray discovered the truth about Gracefield and made a deal with Isabella to postpone his departure from the orphanage. However, Ray was never truly loyal to the supervisor. All of this was planned so that he would have more time to plan an escape. In fact, he was the one who hid Connie's rabbit and then allowed Norman and Emma to find it. His plan was to convince them to go after the girl to return the toy, as this was the only way they could discover the truth about the orphanage. Instead of getting angry when she hears this story and blaming Ray for hiding this secret for so many years, Emma sympathizes with his pain and says that it must not have been easy to carry this burden alone for so many years. At that moment, Norman comes to the conclusion that Ray could be useful as a double agent and says that the boy could help them throw Isabella off the trail. Upon returning home, Ray shows his friends the device he has been developing to disable the tracking chips and says that the final parts will arrive the next day. In the morning, as the 5 children prepare to climb the walls to see what's on the other side, Krona appears and says she wants to join them. She then shows them the numbers tattooed on her neck, and the young people realize that she also grew up in an orphanage. According to the woman, a tracker was implanted in her heart, and if she takes a step outside the farm, an electric shock will stop her heart from beating. Krona's real goal is to become the head supervisor of that orphanage, so she decides to help the children escape so that Isabella will be removed from her position. At dusk, the 5 friends decide to visit Krona's room and discover that there are several other farms scattered throughout that world. When asked about the outside world, the woman claims she has never seen it, but assures them that there are thousands of human beings living outside those walls. Curious to know who those monsters are, Emma asks where they came from, and Krona reveals that there was a war between men and demons thousands of years ago. At that time, demons hunted humans for food, and people had to live in hiding. Tired of endless war, humans and demons decided to make a promise to live in separate worlds. However, for this agreement to work, some humans would have to remain in the world of demons so that their offspring could be domesticated and serve as food. After obtaining this information, the young people leave and Ray goes to talk to Isabella. After picking up the camera he asked for as a gift, the boy recounts part of the conversation he had with Krona and reveals that she is planning to become the new supervisor of Gracefield. The next morning, Ray shows his new acquisition to the children at the orphanage and takes a picture of them all to keep as a souvenir. While the younger children have fun with the camera, Ray reveals to Emma and Norman that it contains the last pieces he needs to destroy the chip. In an attempt to prevent Krona from finding the device, Emma decides to hide it inside Phil's stuffed pig, but the woman manages to find it anyway. However, as she is about to take the device, She sees Isabella approaching and discovers that she has been summoned to be the supervisor of another orphanage. After packing her bags, Krona leaves a pen inside Norman's bedside table, because even though she doesn't have time to carry out her plan, she still wants to harm Isabella. Upon meeting the elderly woman known as Grandma, who supervises the mothers of all the orphanages, Krona reveals that some of the children at Gracefield are planning an escape and expects to be rewarded for revealing this secret. However, instead, the old woman brings a demon to devour her, as she is very fond of Isabella and does not want her to be replaced. When she realizes that Emma and Norman are near the wall, Isabella decides to go after them and advises them to give up their escape plan, as their fate is already sealed. Even though she knows that these children are being raised to serve as food, Isabella claims to love each one of them and does her best to give the young people under her supervision a happy life until the moment of their perishment. At that moment, Emma realizes that Isabella will do everything she can to prevent them from leaving, so she decides to attack her so that Norman has a chance to cross the wall. However, as the boy prepares to begin his climb, he hears Emma's screams, as the supervisor has just broken the girl's leg. At that moment, Norman discovers that he has a scheduled delivery date and, in just 3 days, he will be handed over to the demons. When she finds out that her friend is in danger, Emma and Ray try to convince him to run away the next morning, but Norman refuses to do so, as he doesn't want any of his friends to be handed over in his place. That night, while keeping Emma company, Ray tells her how he discovered the truth about the orphanage. Unlike ordinary people, who lose their memory of everything they experienced until the age of 3 or 4, Ray remembers everything that happened while he was still in his mother's womb. When he was born, the first place the boy saw was a headquarters where there were several other babies and also demons. Soon after, he was taken to the orphanage, where he spent most of his life. Now that his device is ready, Ray decides to give it to Norman and asks his friend to flip the switch after bringing it close to his ear. While they are talking, Don and Gilda are making a new rope so that Norman can escape in the morning, and as soon as Emma's leg is healed, Ray will help her guide the other children out. When he returns to his room and opens his bedside table drawer, Norman finds the pen left by Krona. At dawn, Norman prepares to escape and, with the help of Gilda and Don, he gathers supplies to spend a few days in the forest. With the help of a rope made from sheets, the boy manages to reach the top of the wall, but decides to return to the orphanage after seeing what is on the other side. When confronted by his friends, Norman tells them that there is a cliff on the other side of the wall and the only way to cross it is via a bridge that leads to the headquarters Ray mentioned earlier. After sharing all the information he has gathered with his friends, Norman returns the device that would be used to destroy the chip and gives them a final farewell hug, as he is convinced that he will not have the chance to see them again. After saying goodbye to all the other children, Norman picks up his hat and suitcase and accompanies Isabella to the warehouse. However, upon arriving there, instead of being devoured by a demon, Norman is greeted by a mysterious man who reveals that demons need to devour human brains to gain intelligence. Therefore, the smarter the child, the more valuable their brain is. This man's job is to ensure that the agreement between demons and humans is fulfilled so that both worlds remain at peace. Thanks to the sacrifice of the children, millions of other people can live in safety, and shortly after hearing this, Norman sees a demon approaching. The next morning, Emma receives a visit from Isabella and discovers that the woman plans to recommend her to be the next supervisor of Gracefield. Since the girl cannot change the world, Isabella advises her to do whatever she can to extend her life. 2 months later, with only 2 days left before Ray is handed over, Emma gets up in the middle of the night to talk to her friend and shares with him the escape plan she has been organizing since Norman's departure. Knowing that Isabella would be watching her, Emma took the opportunity to distract her while leaving the training of the younger children in the care of Gilda and Don. Thanks to this plan, the supply of food and tools is complete, and everyone is prepared for the escape that will take place the following day. However, knowing that security is tightened during the day, Ray decides to move the plan forward and says that their best chance of escape is to set the house on fire that night. While Isabella is busy trying to contain the fire, the children will have the chance to evacuate the premises without raising suspicion. After spreading fuel throughout the room, Ray pours the liquid over his own body, as he would rather be eliminated than serve as food for demons. After saying goodbye to his friend, the boy orders Emma to flee with the other children, but instead the girl despairs and begins to scream. Hearing the cries for help, Isabella rushes to see what is happening, and when she discovers that one of her prodigy boys is in the middle of the flames, she hurries to try to put out the fire. While the supervisor uses the fire extinguisher, the other children leave the house and run into the forest. Minutes later, Emma goes to find them and congratulates Ray on his plan. That night, the boy was really willing to perish so his friends could escape. However, Emma made a small change to his plan and used a blade to remove Ray's ear. That way, when Isabella looked at the tracker, she would believe that the boy was trapped in the flames and would be distracted trying to save him. Before leaving, Norman left a letter under Emma's pillow, where he described the rest of the plan that his friends should follow. For now, children under the age of 4 will have to be left behind, but Emma says she will return to get them before they turn 6, as at that age they begin to be handed over to the demons. When she realizes that the older children have escaped, Isabella doesn't think twice about going after them and uses a radio to call headquarters for help. At that moment, the alarm is triggered and the demons spread out through the forest to search for the fugitives. Upon reaching the top of the wall, Emma reveals that Norman has drawn a new escape route and, instead of crossing the bridge, the young people will have to cross the cliff using hangers and ropes. After all her friends have completed the crossing, it is finally time for Emma to join them, but at that moment Isabella appears and reveals that she also tried to escape when she was the girl's age. According to her, a boy named Leslie was eliminated on his 16th birthday, and when she lost the person she loved most, Isabella also tried to escape. However, when she saw that cliff, Isabella realized that there would be no safe place in that world where she could live, so she gave up her escape and began to aspire to the position of supervisor. Even after hearing this story and knowing that she has a better chance of surviving if she decides to follow in Isabella's footsteps, Emma decides to continue her escape. Instead of stopping her, the supervisor decides not to cut the rope, realizing that the girl had enough courage to do what she herself could not. When she sees all those children celebrating on the other side of the cliff, Isabella begins to cry and wishes them a happy and promising future outside that farm. After walking for a few minutes, Emma shows her friends the pen Norman left under her pillow, and from inside it comes a hologram of an owl that points the direction they should follow. When she reports on the successful escape of most of the children from the orphanage, Isabella is held responsible, and even though she sees a demon walking toward her, she smiles and embraces her fate. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.